Express. Let's remind ourselves what this is. Who wants to tell me what Express is? Erica.
It's a web application.
It's like starts
She's so pumped about her foldable phone, she had to pull it out. Check this out.
Oh, you got the foldable phone?
Yeah, look at that thing.
Jeez.
Man. All right.
A framework for Node.js.
A framework for Node.js. Okay, cool. We know that. What was Node.js again?
The backend.
Backend JavaScript.
Node.js is a runtime environment for our JavaScript. So normally we've been running all of our JavaScript in the browser. Now we're also going to be able to run it in the backend, right? So when we say it's a framework for that, the framework is going to allow us to create basically a very simple web server. Okay. Any of you guys who remembers Flask will, and if you liked Flask, you will probably like how Express operates because it's very simplistic. You can sort of add things to it, but it's pretty stripped down.
Is this gonna be like training wheels for something else, much like Flask was for Django?
No.
Okay.
No, we'll be using Express throughout until the end now.
Okay.
Yeah. Good question. All right, so if we want to take a look at what Express is, we can go to this site, npmjs.com, and this is where you could find tons and tons, like millions of libraries for JavaScript. Okay.
NPM.
npmjs.com.
The library.
So if you're ever looking for a library for a specific purpose or something, go on there and just search for it by some keyword. So if we look up Express here, and then I got an exact match here. If I open it up, you guys can see how many weekly downloads this library gets.
11 million.
A few.
Whoa.
It's mildly popular. Yeah. So quite popular. And also, if you want to click on the dependencies here, what this is showing us is what are all the packages that this library depends on. Okay. And then we have dev dependencies too. This is sort of like a separate thing. If you were trying to build Express from the raw code, you would have to install the dev dependencies as well. Okay. You guys will not have to do that. All right. What else do we get to know about Express? Well, it shows the collaborators down here if you were ever interested in this. The last published date was 9 months ago. All right. And then also if you were to go to the GitHub link here, we could check that out. Here on the GitHub link, you can see how many issues it has. So if we've got 11 million weekly downloads and this thing has 118 issues, it's probably a pretty good sign, right? It's extremely popular and there aren't that many things going wrong with it. So it's probably a decent bet as far as something to use for our project.
Excuse me,
Mhm.
for issues, meaning bugs, like, or like something is not working properly as it should?
Yeah, and you can kind of see like some things are not necessarily bugs, like this PR means there's a pull request. It could have been a feature that was added by somebody and now they want their feature to be in the main library. Okay. Some things could be bugs and they would have a bug label. I'm not seeing any on here actually.
That's good.
Yeah, good sign, right? Awaiting more info. So sometimes people are asking questions and those questions need more information, right? All right. Cool. So in general, we're thinking this is a pretty decent library to include in our project. And what we're going to do is I'm going to jump into a terminal here. Make this a little bit bigger. Okay. I'm just going to go to the directory, stacks, run. All right. And then let's create a folder for a brand new project. So I'll say make dir express demo. And then I want to open that up in code. Express demo. Cool. So I've got my folder open up in here. And now I want to open up a terminal again so that I can actually install the things that I want for this project. Now, before we install our dependencies, I want to initialize a node project. Okay? So to do that, we have this command that we can run, npm init. And if I run that, it's going to ask me a whole bunch of questions, like what is the name of the project? I can just click enter to accept Express Demo because that's the name of the current folder that I'm in, right? It's going to ask me for a version number, 1.0.0. I can just accept that if I want it. Description, I'm just going to leave that blank for now. Entry point. This is basically like where does the application start? So index.js. Test command, we're not going to do testing. Git repo, if you had one, you could put in there as well. Keywords. Okay.
So the Git repo, does it automatically post? Or
No.
okay.
No, it's not going to do that, but we'll see what happens. Once I'm finished with this whole process, it has created this for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why did it not appear over here on the left side, though? Oh, it's still asking me if this is okay. So I'll say yes. And then we'll notice over here now we have this brand new file, package.json. Okay? So you can think of this as like the configuration for your project. And if I open that up a little bit, we'll see all those values that we accepted in there. So we've got name, the version. This would just be a default test command if you had some tests in your project. Author, we could fill all that stuff in ourselves later if we want to. So if I want to make some changes to this stuff, I could just drop it right in here now that this file is created. All right. But we want to also install this dependency. This is a dependency called Express, right? So let's go back into our terminal here, and I'm going to say npm install Express. So that should look familiar to you, right? It was the same thing as like when we wanted to install Reach Router or when we wanted to install Axios. Okay, and then now that that's done, notice down here we have in our dependencies we've got listed Express and then an actual version here. So the little hat there is saying at least this version, at least 4.17.1. Okay. And then you'll also get this little package-lock.json file, which is used to kind of like lock your project to specific versions. But this one also includes all of the sub-dependencies. Okay, so this is like a rather large file. Don't worry too much about that. Let's check out our node modules. Wow, the heck? Why are those so big? Does anybody remember how the node modules works? So yeah, when we installed Express, Express also had, it was 30 some odd dependencies. So all of those things got installed, and then any sub-dependencies of those ones also got installed. So it's kind of like this recursive thing that's going on here. Okay. But that's it as far as the installation, not too bad. Just npm install Express, and then you're done. Okay. All right. Now let's create an actual file where we could have some stuff going on. So I'm just going to create, oops, close that. I don't want to be inside node modules. We'll just create a server.js for fun. And this is where the bulk of our little test application is going to go. Okay. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to actually import Express. Okay, how would you guys think I might do that?
Kind of like React.
Yeah, your first inclination would be something like this: import Express from Express, right? Yeah,
I'm like, I don't want to write that one yet.
it's gonna be a little bit different though, and I apologize for this. It's gonna take probably one more version of Node before we can start using this natively without some modifications. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to use this require syntax. So it's slightly different, but it'll be similar enough that hopefully it won't cause you guys too much trouble.
Server.js, is this supposed to be like the main app or a component or something separate?
Yeah, this is completely separate. Let's think of this as our back end. So this has nothing to do with React right now.
Okay.
Okay.
Nothing to do with that.
Nothing to do with React.
Eventually, you could put them together.
And we will.
Okay.
For now, let's just think of this as its own thing. Okay, so instead of doing it that way, what I'm going to say is const express equals require express. Okay? And I'll just put down commented here the other way that you guys were probably thinking, right? Okay? So it's not really that different. We're just setting a const to that variable name, and instead of from, we're saying equals require that thing. So again, the fact that I don't have any sort of pathing in front of this, what do you think that means? If I'm just requiring express right there with no dot slash or anything. It's inside the node modules folder. Exactly. And if we were to search for it inside there,
But how does it know it's
you would see it.
It's
There it
just
is. Well, it's going to automatically search the node modules to try to resolve it in there. And then if it's not in there, you would get an error when running your application. Okay? It is for us because we've installed it. So you'll know what to do if it ever tells you can't resolve this file or whatever. You'll know, oh, I probably didn't install it. That's why it's not there. Okay. All right. Any questions about this? I'm just requiring the actual library. That's giving me the entire library. Okay. Next, what we want to do is we want to create an app with this library, and Express gives us this thing called a top-level function that we can call to create an application. So I can say const app equals the result of invoking the Express function. Okay?
This is the pattern for every app.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're going to be doing this again and again. Okay, finally what I'm going to do down here is I'm going to say app.listen. Okay? And what we can provide to the listen function is a port number that we want to be listening on. So since our React projects are typically going to be running on port 3000, I would typically pick something other than that. Maybe 4000 would be fine. Okay. You can optionally provide a callback inside here. So once that thing is now listening on this port, we can run this callback function. So I can create a little arrow function here, and I could just console log listening now, ... Okay, so what do you guys think that means when I say that I'm listening?
That? You're listening?
Like with my ears, literally?
This is like a pending, like.
So it means that the app is ready to take connections. So it's ready for us to send some requests to it. Okay? It's listening for those requests. So now let's go to our terminal and let's actually run it. I'm going to run it with this thing called NodeMon, which we've sort of talked about here and there. But what NodeMon is going to allow me to do, it will allow me to, every time I make some change to one of these files and I save it, it's going to instantly reload the application for me so that I don't have to stop it and then start it again. Okay? So if you weren't using NodeMon, we would run it by just saying node and then the name of the file. I'd say node server.js. Okay? But that would require me to stop it and start it back up every time I made a change, which is a pain in the butt. So let's use NodeMon. Okay? And then our callback function ran right here, so that means that our application is ready to take requests. So if I go to my browser here, and I go to localhost 4000, you can see we're getting this little message here, cannot get /. Okay? It looks a little different than if I were to go to some totally non-existent website, right? If I just went to like blah.com, you get something like this, right? So what the cannot get is saying, when I go back to localhost 4000, is that we simply don't have a route for this index. That's it. Okay? Cannot get / All right, so let's talk about how we can create a route. So inside here, before I do my app.listen, this is where I can create some routes. So let's just create one for the index route. We'll say app.get. What do you guys think the get means? It's a get request, exactly. That's our HTTP verb right there. And then here we'll specify what is the route that we want. So if I do /, that means that's the index route right there. And then if you guys had to guess, what would the second argument be?
The path?
The first argument was the path.
Okay.
So what do you think?
The name
A
of the
function,
component?
yes. Callback functions are everywhere. They keep coming back. All right, so our callback function is going to take in two things, one of which is the request, the other one is the response. Okay. So for now, let's just log out the request. We'll say console.log request. And then I'm going to send back a response to my browser just so that I know that something happened. I'll say response.send, and I'll just pass back a string. So hello from Express. Okay, save that. Let's go back to our browser. And there we go. We're getting our string. Let's open up our terminal to see what that request object looked like. Holy moly. A lot of stuff in there, huh? This is a very large object. Whole bunch of things. But I don't want you guys to worry about all that stuff and think like, oh, I'm going to have to use all this. No, we're going to keep it pretty simple. Okay? So let's make sure everyone's getting this part. So all I'm doing, I was just logging out the actual request object that was given to me in the body of this function. And then I'm just sending back a response that was a string. That's it. Any questions about this? No? Okay.
Do we see what the console log say? I'm sorry, yeah.
We did, yeah. It was just there's a whole lot of stuff in here. So this is like a monster size object. Okay. Okay. All right, so that's kind of interesting. That's how we can send back a string. What if I wanted to send back some data in a different format, like say JSON? Are we all kind of familiar with what JSON looks like or what that is? Probably we should talk about it, right?
Yeah.
So JavaScript object notation is a way in which different services can communicate with one another. Okay, so you'll see this commonly used by APIs. For instance, what we were getting back from SpaceX, this was just JSON. Okay, and in that case, we were getting back a big array of all these launches. Okay, or they can also send you back an object. So either one, you're either going to get an array of things or you're going to get an object that has some key value pairs inside of it. All right, so let's create a new route where we want to return back some JSON. So I'm going to say app.get, and I'm going to say /API/ we'll say students. Okay, we're going to say that we're creating like a student API where we can make requests and go get some data from it. So second argument again is going to be what? It's going to be a callback function. And you guys will routinely see this when you're doing Express stuff as rec and res. Okay? So again, this is just short for request and response. You can call these whatever you want, but this is typically how you'll see it, rec and res. Okay? So let's just create some students up here. so that we can kind of get this started. So I'll just create an array. We're going to pretend like this is our database right now, right? Because we haven't done any MongoDB. Just going to say const students equals this array, and then I'll have first name Aya, last name Ibayashi. Ibayashi. Okay. Actually, we'll say favorite color. What's your favorite color? Green. Okay. Very good. Let's have one more. Okay. Erica. Wait, is yours with a K? Yeah. Yes. Okay. Favorite color? Pink. Cool. All right, so we got a couple students. We're going to treat this like this is our database for now, okay? Super simple. All right? So if I want to go and get all of my students, the next thing that I want to do is I want to return those back to wherever the request was made, okay? So in the same way that we were able to say response.send, I can also say res.json if I want to convert something into JSON. All right. So I'm going to say res.json, and then I'm going to pass in all the students. Okay. The reason it may look a little confusing why I'm prefixing this with API right now. The reason why is because we just want to make sure that there are never collisions between our front end and our server routes. So this prefix is just telling us we're inside of our API routes right now. Okay. So let's try going to this route, /API/students. So I'll just go API/students. Hey, that's pretty cool. I'm getting this thing back as JSON, right? It's just an array of objects. But testing things in the browser does have some limitations. One of which being, what are the only two types of requests that we can make in the browser if we're not using JavaScript at all? Get and post, right? So I can load up a GET request like this by just punching in the URL. But what's the only way for me to create a post request? Yeah, it has to be a form submission, right? That's kind of a pain in the butt. So we've got a tool that we can use to make requests on our behalf, which will make developing a lot easier, and it's called Postman. Has anyone ever heard of this or used it before? Oh, in Java. Okay, cool. Excellent. So you guys know what's going on. I'm going to open up the tool, and when you're in here, we can simply create some new requests where we want to play around with something. So if I click on plus here, it will create a brand new request for me. And then I'm just going to type in HTTP localhost 4000/API/students. Okay, and then I'm going to click send. Hey, awesome. Now I've got all of my students, right? And it gives me the nice formatting so I can really see how this thing is structured. All right, any questions about this? Postman?
So we have to install Postman?
Yeah, and the link, I believe I put the link to do that in the schedule. Let me make sure that I did. Download Postman. Yes. Cool. So really friendly to look at. Much better than it looked in the browser. You guys can install JSON extensions for your browser, but I would advise just stick with Postman. Okay. All right, so that looks pretty good. What if I wanted to get one of these students by ID? Well, maybe they need to have IDs, right? Okay. This one would have an ID of 2. All right. So let's create a route where we could do that. So I'm going to say app.get/API/students. Then I'm going to put this little colon ID. What do we think that means? Yeah, it's a path variable. This is going to look exactly like it does in our front end when we're using reach router, right? Okay, now we need a callback function, of course. Okay, so inside this callback function, I'm going to simply, well, let's see. Maybe we should call this 0 since it's 0 indexing, right? I don't want to make this more complicated than it is. All right, so our IDs are 0 and 1. This will make it easy. Okay, so how do I get that specific student by ID? Well, on the request object, I have access to this thing called params. Okay, so I'm going to say const student ID equals rec.params.id. So rec.params is this object that has all of the different routing params that showed up, anything that we prefix with a colon in there. Okay? But this will be the actual ID that comes through with the request. Okay? So if I do API/student/1, this will evaluate to 1. Okay? Yeah, in fact, let's log it out for now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to console.log rec.params. Okay, and then I'm just going to res.json an empty object, just so we return something. Okay, let's go back to Postman, and let's change this to /5, for instance. Okay, so it sent me back the empty object as expected, and I'll open up my terminal here, and if we go all the way down here, you see rec.params is this object that has an ID key, and then the ID is set to 5.
That's really I just bring it.
Mm-hmm.
And the params is coming from any path variables that we may have said.
Right. So if we had a second one in there, we would be seeing that key value pair as well. Yep. Exactly. Okay. So let's set this as we were trying to do. We were saying the student ID equals rec.params.id, and then what I want to send back is going to be students at that specific ID. Why am I using bracket notation and not dot notation here?
Something is happening.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if anyone's paying attention to that. Does anyone remember why?
You're using a variable that
Correct, because this value right here, student ID, has to be calculated essentially. I'm not looking for the string student ID inside the array. I'm looking for that index. Okay. So let's try this. We have a couple students, so I should be able to get student 1, right? There we go. Now we're getting Erica. So I'm able to get one student by ID. What would happen if I tried to get student 5? Should give me back undefined, right? Because that's not actually in there. Or blank in this case. Yeah. So because it's turning our response into JSON, so if our response was undefined, it just turns it into blank. Okay. And obviously, if we wanted to have sort of some logic for that, we could put it in, but I'm not going to worry too much about that. The main thing is that you guys see how the routing stuff works right now. Okay? Any questions about getting a student by ID? All right. What else might we want to do with this service? So we've got a service where we can kind of interact with our data, right? We're able to get all of the students. We're able to get a student by ID. What other kinds of things would you want?
What if you want to update?
But
May want to update, but before we can update, let's give ourselves the ability to make new ones, right? All right. So what kind of request do you think I would do for that? A post request, right? Here comes this HTTP verb, app.post. And the route that I'm going to use is going to be API/students. So this would be to create a new one. I need a callback function again. Now the question is, how am I going to be able to get the data that comes through with the request and actually use it inside here? Okay? This is where we're going to have to add something to what we're doing. And this will start to make a little bit more sense as you guys do kind of assignment after assignment. But for now, what I want you to know is that you need to say, up here above all of our routes, you need to say app.use. And then inside there, we have to do express.json. You're going to invoke that function.
and this is, I'm sorry, this is for what again?
This is so that we'll have access to whatever was in the body of the request. So if I submit some data for a new student, I want to be able to have access to it, right?
So
If we did not have this, we'll have no access to the body of the request. Okay? And in fact, we can test this out. Actually, I'll just comment it for now. We'll create this route, and I'm going to console.log request.body. Okay, and then we'll just res.json an empty object. Okay, so to change the method of the request, we can just change this little drop down here to post. Change the address there. Okay, so we got our empty object back, and if I look in my terminal here, the request body is undefined, so I have no access to whatever was sent through with the request right now. That's what this line was for up here. So when we say app.use express.json, what we're telling our application is that people are going to send us requests with some JSON in those requests. So please make that data available to us inside these different routes. Okay? So if I want to include some data with this request, I can go to body right here up in the top section, and you'll see that I've got some different data types for this. You guys are going to choose raw, and then once you choose that, you can pull down this little pull down over here to JSON. Okay. So let's send in some JSON. So we're going to have a new student, first name. Say, is it Lawrence with a W?
Yeah.
Okay. You're going to have to help me with your last name.
U-R-I-U.
L-I-U. Oh, that's not so bad.
That's not bad.
That's pretty easy. Okay. Favorite color. Okay, what's your favorite color?
Pink.
I don't think I've ever seen you wear pink, though. All right.
This has made it up.
Funny guy, funny guy. All right, cool. So now we're going to log out the request.body, and I'm going to send this request. Okay, sent. And if I go back to my terminal here, it's still undefined. Oh, I didn't save my file. Whoops. You see that little circle up here? It's telling me I didn't save it. So let me try that one more time. Send. All right. There we go. Now we have this object that has all those key value pairs that I passed to it from Postman. Okay.
Did that get saved? Does it get saved?
Not yet, because I haven't told it to, right? Yeah, I'm going to have to do that. So the way that we can save it, I mean, remember, this is not a database, so if I restart the application, any new entries that I add are going to be lost. Okay. What we'll do is we'll come down here, and we'll say students at students dot, no, actually I don't need to do that. Let's just push into it, right? We'll say students dot push, and I'm going to create an object. The ID is going to be what? Probably students dot length, right? It'll be how long this array is now. If the array has two things in it, that way the new ID will be 2. So students dot length. Okay.
I assume we're not accounting for deleted entries.
Yeah, we'll do. Don't worry about that. Okay. And now watch this. I'm gonna spread across rec.body. Whoa, what did I just do there?
You spread it across.
It means we're going to take all the key value pairs that are inside rec.body and just drop those into this new object that I'm creating. Makes it a lot easier than me typing, first name, rec.body.first name, last name, rec.body.last name, right? Do you guys want to see it the other way though? Like, is that?
Yes.
All right, first name is rec.body.first name. Last name, rec.body.last name. Favorite color, rec.body.favorite color. Okay? So that's how it would be normally. I'll just comment this out. Know that you could do that spread if you wanted to. All right. Now, what we want to return is we probably want to return out this new object, right? So maybe I should save it to a variable first so that we can send it back to our Postman. So I'll just say const new student equals that object. And then here, I'll push it in. And I also want to return it back as well. All right, let's try this out. So let's send this request again. And here you can see that I'm actually getting my response. It's telling me Lawrence has an ID of 2, and it has all of his data inside there. Now if I make a request to go and get all of my students, he should be included. So if I change this back to a GET request, we've got all 3. So it's acting as kind of like this temporary database for us. Okay, that's good. What else did we say that we wanted to be able to do with our API? We want to be able to update, right? How about if we learn how to delete first? Right? That's probably going to be super easy. So let me just knock this out here. And let's create an app.delete request. Okay? So again, these are always our HTTP verbs. We're saying this is the kind of HTTP request it is. It's going to be a delete request. And I'm going to make that to /API/students/some specific ID that I want to get rid of. Again, we're going to have our callback function. Okay. Let's say I wanted to delete the index of 1. How would I do that? Ooh, maybe we could practice our filtering, right? That'd be kind of fun. Yeah, if I'm going to try to filter through this array, though, I may need to reassign it. So let's change it to a let. Okay. Okay, so if I want to get rid of one, I'm going to say let students equal the result of filtering students. Okay, and what do we have to pass filter? A callback function, right? So we'll say for each student, I want to keep you if the student.id is not rec.params.id. Okay, where are we getting the rec.params.id from? It's coming from right here, right? The end of our path. And then, so assuming that goes well, let's just say res.json. I'll just send back an object that says status success. All right. So let's set up a request to delete the index of 1. Oh, no, I didn't. You're right. What would I do without you here? Okay, great. So I've got the ID here, and let's just change this to a delete request. Uh-oh. Can't access what? Students before initialization? How was I doing that? Oh. Why am I saying let, right? This should just be students equal. My mistake. Let's try that again. Okay, status is success. So if I were to make another GET request for all the students, I would expect Erica to be gone, right? Sure enough. Or wait.
I'm there. Lawrence is
What?
fine.
Wait, what ID did I pass? Did I pass 1 or 2?
Erase them all.
Oh, wait a minute. Did I write my callback function wrong? The rec.params.id is a string. Maybe I should put a plus in front of that, right? All right, let's try that one more time. So this time we're going to try to delete Erica again. Let's see if this works. Delete, success, get. Yeah, that worked. So we just had to convert it back into an actual number. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And let me close the sidebar so that you can see it a little bit
And
better.
also, what was the reasoning why it should be a res.json instead of our request?
Because the request does not have a method on it called JSON. It's the response that has the JSON method. Yeah.
What's the general difference between request and response?
Well, they're really two things. So the request is all the information about the whatever the request was that's being sent to the server. The response is all of the functions and data that we need for sending things back to whatever was making the request. So it's like two sides to the same coin, right?
Okay. I'll
Does anyone know which one works? So, like, if we're thinking about this in terms of the request comes in, right, and then our server is over here, and then the response, you can see how these are essentially different things, right? They're different actions that are taking place. So the request was us sending something in through Postman. Okay. Our server then handles that request, does some logic or whatever, and then it's going to send a response back to Postman. So they have different functions.
Oh, they have.
Yeah. Okay. All right, finally, the only other thing that we haven't done yet is we haven't updated, right? Okay. Does anybody know which HTTP verb we use for update?
Object.
It's a good guess. It's actually called put. Okay, so we can say app.put API/students/ID, right? Because I want to know which student am I updating. Rec, res. Okay. Cool. And then what are we going to do? We're probably going to say students, oops, at that specific index. So where are we getting the index again? Rec.params.id. And let's see, what else do I want to get? I want to just change a few things at a time. So let's, all right. Sorry, let's just get the existing student first, right? So let's say const student to update, and then it will be equal to this, students at this specific index. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to update all these individual properties. So I'll say it equals student, oops. The ID I don't want to change, right? So how can I do that? Do you guys have issues if I do spread on this? Okay. So again, that's giving me all the key value pairs that were currently inside that student. Okay. Then we'll say first name, oops, which is going to be what? Rec.body.firstName. Last name. Rec.body.lastname. Okay. Favorite color. Rec.body.favorite color. Okay. So we just updated that student. Let's let's return it back, right? So we'll say res.json students at rec.params.id. All right, let's get it set up. So we're going to change, the only student we have left is Aya. You're lucky. You made the cut. We'll go and change this to a put request. And then inside the body, we'll keep your first name the same. And then let's just update your last name. So say new last name. Your favorite color was, oh, green, that's right. Yes. Okay, so we've got this put request, and then we also need to specify her ID, which was 0. She was student 0. Okay, make the request. Cool, it's giving me back the information, the updated information, right? And if I were to make a GET request for all of my students, it should have just her in the array by, I thought we deleted Erica.
I'm here.
Ah, you know what happened? Our server restarted because it's constantly restarting every time I make a change and save.
Then Lawrence is gone.
He had already been deleted, right? He had been gone before. Yeah. Yeah, in fact, the first time that he got deleted was for the exact same reason, because our server restarted. Because our filter wasn't quite right, so we didn't delete him because of the filter, right?
Is it also because they're both hard-coded into the...
Yeah, exactly. Because they're hard-coded, every time the server restarts, they'll still be there. They're the only ones that, escape unscathed. Right. So that's it. We did everything, right? We did all the CRUD operations with a fake database. Okay.
Do you have to use put to update? Post. I don't know. Yeah, because Java, like, I ran into a lot of issues trying to use split to update, and like the.
Well, you won't run into any here. I'm not sure what they were with Java, but
Because no, yeah, like.
unless it's user error, I
I mean,
can't,
it probably
can't guarantee you won't make
is.
user
Naturally,
errors.
It probably is. Like, but,
Yeah.
Yeah, I just ran into a lot of errors, but then like when I looked online, it said like there's not much difference between post and put. And I was just wondering like if it's so different here where we had to use put to update.
Well, what's good about using these different methods is that they're more descriptive of what's happening. So if I'm using a post, usually it's me creating something. In the same way, a delete request is we're trying to delete something, right? A put just means that we're updating the entire record. Right. Let's just go through a couple of these. Okay, Hutan, give me 52 to 56. What's going on here? So if I say app.delete, that means I'm calling the function because you can see that I have these parentheses here, right? So I'm actually calling the delete function.
And then you.
What are we passing in there?
You're passing the API student ID.
Okay, so this is the path, and then what's the second thing?
That's your callback function with request and response, and then student equals to filter.
Okay.
And
So does the filter function modify the original array? No. It gives me back a new array that is filtered in the way that I want. So here I'm just reassigning. So ultimately it does get modified, but that's just because of my reassignment, right? Okay? And then what were we doing down here, Hujan?
returning
Yeah, you're right. We are basically returning something. When we say res.json, we're saying let's send this back to whoever made the request. Okay? So JSON means I'm specifically sending a specific kind of thing, which is this JavaScript object notation. And I'm passing it in an object that just has one key value pair in it, right? Status, and the status is success. Okay. Nick, tell me what's going on here in this put function.
So we're using app.put, which is to update.
Good.
Passing in our path
Mhm.
and our callback function with request and response.
Right.
We create a new const, students to update equals the students at the direct platforms that ID for the student ID.
Yep.
And then we have students at rec.parent.id is equal to the object spread across students to update.
So this is a reassignment right here, right? Can everyone see this? I'm saying the students at this specific index, I want it to have this object in it. Yes.
Can you run through the way that the spread student to update works in this instance again? Like what?
Sure, yeah.
The only thing is ID, right?
Yeah, the only thing that we needed was ID. That's true. So I could have kept it a little bit simpler. Maybe we'll do it that way. So let's just say ID and set it as student to update.id.
But
Is that a little better?
Yeah, but then in the case that we were using the spread, and there was more than just one thing, it's pretty much just keeping everything the same, right? Or
It's keeping everything the same, and then when we establish these things down here, those values will be overwritten. Yep.
Could you have also done red body filter? Or like what we did earlier?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So if I want to kind of save myself some typing here, I can just come in here and say .rec.body. Yeah, good point. Right. Yeah, I just figured we probably should make it a little more explicit so that you guys you have a more visual sense of what's happening there.
So if you wanted to use .rec.body,
Mhm.
did you have to do what the .students to update? Is it? Oh wait, the spread can only be used at the end. Okay, so you can't have two spreads.
Well, you could have two spreads, but we're not going to do that. That would make it even more confusing. Whatever spreads you have to be at the end, but there could be more than one.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. The important thing down here, what was going on with the app.listen, Greg? Last line of the file.
Giving the new name to
Line 72. I'm giving a new name to what?
instead of like $300, you give it $4 instead of
Okay, so this is our port number, though.
yeah, we change
Okay.
we give the new phone number.
And then what was the second argument here that we're passing to the listen method? It's a callback function, right? So once I'm listening, let's invoke this function right here.
And you said that we want to set the port number to not be what we were doing for React, which is 3,000. Is it just for this example, or going forward, are we going to have it set to 3,000?
No, going forward, you're going to want to avoid that same number. The reason being is because you guys are going to have projects that have an Express backend and that have a React front end. The React front end will typically be running on 3,000.
And they're going to connect somehow. Right?
They're going to
It's
connect,
easier.
but we don't want the port numbers to be the same.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, we covered a lot of ground. Any questions before we break?
When they connect, would you be running the whole project on 3,000 or whatever you set for the backend?
No, they're going to be running on different port numbers.
Oh, okay.
There is a way to kind of but they'll be on different ports. We'll have one on 3,000, and your back end could be on 4,000 or 5,000, whatever you want. Yeah. Yeah, they'll be able to communicate.
In some way.
We'll get to that stuff.
Okay.
It's good that you guys are thinking about it, though. Cool. All right, let me stop this.